Welcome to the fourth in a series of videos looking at the modern incarnation of Donkey Kong. Over the next few weeks, I'll be doing a series of shorter episodes that will cover the many titles which fall outside of the mainline Donkey Kong Country pentalogy. I shall call it DK, the DK Wrap-Up. It's a really clever pun, trust me. First, let's talk about the scope of this retrospective. Beginning with his appearance in Mario Kart 64, and continuing unabated to this day, the majority of the Donkey Kong canon is in fact made up of Mario sports titles. And you know, that's fine. I'm glad he's important enough to be there. A lot of these are excellent games in their own right, and somehow, just as many are Mario parties. However, this series would carry on for years if I tried to talk about all of them. Therefore, I just won't be covering this cavalcade of cameo games. Other than that, the only rule is that a member of the Kong family must be playable. Let's get started. Throughout the original Super Nintendo trilogy, there was a pattern. We could look forward to a new Donkey Kong Country game each November. Then, sometime the next year, it would be followed by a portable companion on the Game Boy. These made a handheld trilogy, Donkey Kong Land. Shortly after the events of Donkey Kong Country, Cranky is rambling to its heroes, as he does. After a few hours of resolutions and colors and too many buttons, DK has had enough, and he snaps at his father. His grandfather. His patriarchal figure. People like Donkey Kong Country for more than just the fancy graphics, you old coot! Cranky says if that's the case, the game would have been just as successful on a weaker system that couldn't handle such fancy graphics, right? A system like, say, the Game Boy? DK should learn to respect his elders, because this was all part of the plan. DK and Diddy have little choice but to agree when Cranky says he will call K. Rool on the telephone to request that the banana horde be stolen again, just so DK and Diddy can prove themselves. This story is ridiculous, and I love it. It's one of the first times I remember encountering metafiction, but the story is not the only thing that's odd about Donkey Kong Land. For whatever reason, Nintendo's Game Boy games tended to be much more peculiar than their console counterparts, and Donkey Kong Land was no exception, and I do mean that in the best way. It starts out in your standard DK jungle, but the deeper you get, the more whacked out the game becomes. Where Country was atmospheric and realistic, Land could not do that, and it embraced that fact. You'll eventually discover the sunken depths of Kremlantis, pull Kong letters out of the interface to make platforms, and ultimately chase down K. Rool in Big Ape City. The Kongs clambering through a cityscape is such a juxtaposition of the series' usual setting, and that's awesome. What's not so awesome is the gameplay. The story proposes something the game design fails to deliver. The heroes claim that DKC would have been a fun game, even without the graphics. So it's ironic that Donkey Kong Land is handicapped by trying to copy them. I'd have preferred traditional, smaller pixel sprites if they could have kept some of that fluid, fast-paced gameplay intact. That said, I understand why Rare made this decision. Donkey Kong Country would have been a fun game without them, but it was the ACM graphics that made it famous, and bringing that to the Game Boy was invaluable from a marketing perspective. It's just, I don't know, this doesn't even look that good. These assets just weren't meant for a monochromatic, low-resolution display. And you might be saying, well, of course they look bad blown up to this resolution. But oh no, it was much worse at the time. This is about what the game looks like on a Game Boy Color, but that thing didn't come out until 1998. This is more akin to what it looked like on an original Game Boy in '95. Rare made the mistake of featuring dark character sprites on a dark background of the same color, and on the Game Boy's tiny, blurry little screen. It's no wonder I never got past World 2. Well, it's time to fix that. Look at how tiny K. Rool is. Anyway, I did finally finish it. Now, if the opening story was that meta, I can't wait to see the ending. Huh. No, it kinda works. Fortunately, Donkey Kong Land 2 and 3 would fix most of these issues. The engine was refined, the stage design was more solid, and thanks to lighter backgrounds and much better optimized character sprites, you could actually see what you were doing. They even managed to pull off some degree of that kinetic gameplay. 2 and 3 are excellent platformers for the Game Boy, although they don't really deviate from their 16-bit counterparts as much as I would like. The original Donkey Kong Land is certainly the most interesting. It did a lot to expand the series' mythology, but as a game, I can't really recommend it unless you're a hardcore fan. In any case, all 3 games finally came out on the 3DS eShop for $4 a piece, so check them out if you'd like. But speaking of mythos, next week, we'll take a look at a game that didn't just world build, it spun off an entire universe. Until then, keep geeking.